Hello and welcome to this video on learning the parts of a physical book. This video will help you examine physical characteristics of rare books in special collections and use correct terminology when describing the parts of a book. It is meant for students who are new to studying rare books and studying the book as a physical object. Books are something we all recognize, but come in so many shapes and styles. Their design has even inspired many book-like and non-book items, such as this iPad cover, designed to look like a historical book binding, and this decorative box, camouflaged as an old book. Bound books all share many of the same physical attributes, and that's what we will explore today. First, go ahead and pause this video and grab any book nearby. If you have access to a hardback or textbook, that is best, but any book will do for this demonstration. As we go over the parts of the book, please follow along with me, identifying those same parts in your own book. The object we think of as a modern bound book wasn't a common form we would recognize until the Middle Ages, between the 4th and 8th century. Before this, tablets made of wood, wax, and stone, and scrolls, often made of papyrus, silk, hemp, flax, linen, or mulberry, were common materials ancient people would use to document and organize their written information. It's time to start examining your book. We are going to start on the outside and work our way in. Go ahead and take a look at your book's exterior. In the European tradition, covers of books were often made of leather, stretched over 2 flat wooden boards, creating a safe casing for the text within. Some more inexpensive books had leather covers without boards, called limp bindings. These are similar to our modern paperback books. Modern hardback book covers commonly use cloth-covered boards made of cardboard, making them lighter and cheaper than their ancestors' wooden boards. The front cover is called the upper board, and the back cover is called the lower board. The top of the book is called the head, and the bottom is called the tail. Can you identify the upper and lower boards and the head and tail of your own book? Every bound book has a spine. Historically, the spine of a book was created by stacking smaller sections of pages, called gatherings, and sewing them together onto sewing supports, causing bands or ridges on the outside of the spine. Now, modern book spines are often created with glue instead of sewing. This is cheaper and much faster, but it's much less sturdy, so some books, especially large books like textbooks, are still sewn in some fashion to make a more durable spine. What materials is your book's spine support made of? The top and bottom of the spine are sometimes protected by colorful material called end bands, which help provide structure to the spine or are simply decorative. The part of the spine that bends when the book is opened is called the hinge. Does your book at home have colorful end bands? Is the book's hinge creased and well worn, or is it new and smooth? Historically, before the prevalence of paper and cloth bindings, leather covers were decorated with metal tools. This process is called blind tooling. If gold is part of the decoration, it is simply called tooling. Here is a modern example of tooling in a book mimicking a historical design. Now that we're familiar with the exterior of the book, let's take a look inside the cover. Go ahead and open up your book so you can see the interior of the cover. The interior of the upper board might have a different covering. This unique paper is called the paste-down end paper and free end papers. These papers were added after the book was printed and are often used for artistic effect. The part of the pages closest to the binding is called the gutter of the book. Does your book have paste-downs or end papers made of a different paper than the rest of the book? Now close your book and take a look at the edges of the pages. The edges of the sheets are called the text block or book block. During the binding process, paper is folded, cut, and stacked into sections, then trimmed to fit in the size of the desired book. The book block is usually trimmed to be shorter than the cover's boards so that the pages are protected. Take a look at the long edge of the book block. This is called the foredge. Occasionally, in history, this was painted, so when you set the pages at an angle, a picture would appear. More modern books, after the 18th century, sometimes gilded the edges of these pages for decoration, like this book here. Sometimes people would use the foredge as a place to write a book's title, and spine titles were not common until modern bookbinding and printing. Okay, are you ready to take a look at the text? Go ahead and open your book to the first page with printing on it. A modern book's printed text format can vary greatly depending on its design and purpose, but there are some recognizable standard features of books that have been common for the past 400 years. Often, books will first have a half-title page, which just has the title information, and then a full title page, which has the author, publisher, and other information. Title pages were not used or standard until the early modern period, after 1500, so medieval European texts would just start immediately with the book's contents on page 1. Another historical feature of identification was the colophon. Colophons were professional notes written at the end of the text to identify the scribe who wrote the work. Later on in the early modern era, there would often be an advertisement printed in the front or the back of the book, displaying more books by the author or the publisher. A printer's imprint, seen here, or copyright page like this one, are often included in the front of books, as well as a dedication. Does your book have advertisements, copyright statements, or a dedication page? Fonts are chosen and formatted for individual books, with headings and chapter titles designed as well. These are called running titles. You can see the title of the book on one side and the chapter title on the other. The book you are looking at probably has page numbers. Page numbering wasn't commonly used until the 1500s. So how did people keep track of their pages? I will show you the markings that book printers used to keep track of pages, which were then in turn used by readers as well. Isolate one sheet of paper between your fingers. This single sheet is called a folio. It has a front, called the recto, and a back, called the verso. When printers would print books, they would print the text on large sheets of paper, front and back, and then fold the paper so the pages would follow in the proper order. To make sure they were keeping track correctly when the pages were folded, printers printed something called folio numbers on these pages to document each page. Most commonly, folios were marked with a letter and a number, such as A, A2, A3, A4, etc. For example, this book's folio numbers start with the letter B. This is why you need the recto and the verso terminology. When describing printed text without page numbers, you can use the folio number to indicate where you are looking. For example, folio B1R or B1V means folio B1, recto or verso, meaning front or back. Your book probably has page numbers, and it probably doesn't have foliation. Foliation disappeared from printing in the 19th century, and now both printers and readers rely on page numbers to navigate a text. Thank you for participating in this Parts of a Book tutorial. As we have learned today, the structure of a modern book shares many facets of style and design with its historical predecessors. We hope that this video has helped you to be comfortable identifying the parts of this very familiar everyday object, and this knowledge will encourage you to explore and learn more with historical and rare books in your university library and special collections.